Hello, and welcome to Everyday Office. I'm Neil Malek, your host and president of Knack Training, a training and consulting business that's focused on Microsoft software and professional development. In this podcast, I explore the tips and tricks and strategies to help you get the most out of your work, whether it's in Microsoft Office 365, whether it's in project management, data visualization, whether it's in the Power Platform or Copilot. In this discussion, we are talking about how you can hit the reset button in your presentations. And I'm going to really be talking here about how going back to the basics can improve your presentations significantly. But first, here's some news and announcements. So the biggest news in Microsoft software last week was a set of announcements that Microsoft is calling Wave 2 for their Microsoft 365 Copilot product. Satya got online and announced a bunch of new features to Microsoft 365 Copilot. And, here at Knack Training, we've been using it since February. That's the first time that small businesses were allowed to purchase it. We started teaching classes on it back in May. And let me tell you, for somebody who's used to teaching classes where you just tell somebody, hey, if you push this button, this is going to happen. If I teach you how to make a Power BI dashboard, I know what the button is going to do every single time. But when you teach a class about generative AI, it's so stressful because the whole concept of generative AI is you ask it a question and then it invents an answer for you. Trying to predict what Copilot is going to do during class is really stressful as a teacher. But anyway, yes, Microsoft rolled out this new Wave 2 concept, and there are some really interesting and powerful tools built into this. The first one is something that they are calling Copilot Pages. So the first thing you need to know about Copilot Pages is that the idea is you ask Copilot a question in BizChat. That's where you go to Microsoft365.com/chat, right? You go to that website, you type in some big elaborate prompt, and it gives you back a big response with lots of points to it. Now, at that point, maybe you take that and you start copying and pasting it or modifying it in some way. Maybe you use it immediately. But another thing you could easily see yourself do is saying, okay, I've got the starting point for a conversation. Now I need to start collaborating with some of my coworkers, right? Now, for a long time, what you had to do was just copy that and put it in a Word document or throw it in a Teams message and say, hey, everybody, this is what Copilot told me. Let's start talking about this. Both Copilot Pages, the idea is after you get done with the prompt and it responding to you, there's a button that you press and it converts it into a collaborative page. This is something called a loop component, which is by itself a very new way of working. I think I really need to get Denise from my team on the podcast talking about loop components, because the idea is that similarly to Word, Excel, or PowerPoint files, loop components are these new files that end in the extension .loop. And you could have a bulleted list or a table or something like that, and then share that with your coworkers, collaborate on it. So this is exactly what happens with Copilot. You take all the content that Copilot responded to you with, and then you dump it into this collaborative page, and you and your coworkers can really manipulate it, have discussions about it. Really interesting new way of thinking. And then the second thing that I thought was really very interesting. So Copilot agents is the concept that we're going to talk about here. For a little while now, Microsoft, a few months back, went into their Power Platform, and they took a tool that was doing okay called Power Virtual Agents. And they just said, you know what, we're going to rename that to Copilot Studio. And Copilot Studio can be used by the more technically savvy people in your organization to invent a new chatbot, to create a Copilot that is specifically designed for something that your business needs. Kind of an interesting tool. But with this new Copilot agent concept, the idea is that literally anybody can go into a SharePoint site, click on a couple of files that have a lot of really robust and useful information in them, and just say, hey, let's make a Copilot based on this information. So the easiest thing to target here is, if you had a few files that described all of the things that you could do from an insurance perspective, or a few files about maternity leave, or you had a few files about marketing or something along those lines. And then somebody came into your business and said, hey, I want to know more about maternity leave, or I want to know more about our branding system for marketing, or whatever it was. You could make a little Copilot chatbot and just say, hey, just talk to that, and it'll give you all the answers you need. You could say, hey, chatbot, what font are we supposed to use? And it'll come back with the right font for you. Really interesting stuff. So in the year since Microsoft even released Copilot in the first place, they've now introduced an entirely new set of tools. I really think this Copilot thing is going places. So definitely worth taking a look at. All right, so now for today's main topic. The topic of today's podcast is called hitting the reset button on your presentation. And when I wrote that down, at first I had one very literal meaning for that title. And then as I thought about it, I thought, I could probably expand this to some things that are a little bit more metaphorical too. So I'm going to do 3 ideas around hitting reset for your presentation. And the first one is going to be the most literal translation of that. So the first one is as follows. When you go into PowerPoint, no matter which PowerPoint presentation you have open, behind every PowerPoint presentation is the template that designed that presentation. And that template has things like the backgrounds and the fonts and the colors and all the rest of it. Now, very specifically, I think the spine of that template is the slide master and the slide layouts. Now, you've seen these. If you have ever gone into PowerPoint and you use on the Home tab that new slide button, and you hit the little drop-down menu, as many little options as there are on the new slide button, those are all of your different slide layouts. So whoever designed the template also designed those layouts, and you can use one of those layouts, right? That's one of the things that you can choose to use to create a new slide in your presentation. Now, here's the problem that a lot of people have. They'll go into their presentation, and I'm sure this has happened to literally everybody listening to the sound of my voice right now. You go into a presentation, and for some reason, some of your slides use a different font size than others, or they use a different bullet point, or they use a whole different font altogether, or for some reason on some slides, there are slide numbers, and other slides there aren't slide numbers, or on some slides the text box seems to slide over just a little bit. All sorts of weird stuff happens. And the problem is that if you really want to make a good professional presentation, most people then look at that and go, oh man, I am going to have to sit down and make sure in painstaking detail that every one of these slides looks exactly the same. But everybody, when I do consulting for my clients, my number one tool, by far, the number one tool by a mile, is up on the Home tab, really close to the new slide button and the layout button and the section button. There's a button that says reset on it. Remember, I told you it was a literal translation here. That reset button, its job is to say, hey, on this slide, whatever people did to this slide, maybe they changed the font size, maybe they copied and pasted something in and it went in wonky for some reason, maybe they slid it over on accident. Let's just take all of those things and make the slide look like what it looked like when they first made it. It'll still have the content in it, but all of that weird formatting on the content, we're just going to throw it all away. So one of the things I actually do is I will go over to all the slides on that left-hand side in PowerPoint. I'll click on one of them, but then I'll use the keyboard shortcut Control-A, because what that does is selects all the slides. And then I'll just go up and hit that reset button. And basically through the entire presentation, it just goes through and makes sure that all the slides look the way they were supposed to originally. So many people just spend hours and hours highlighting every little character, making sure that every character is the same font and the same size and things like that. But hitting the reset button is far and away the easiest way to clean up a messy presentation. So try that one out. Thank me later. Promise you it's worth the time and energy. All right. Idea number 2. Resetting your approach to the slide. So we're getting slightly more metaphorical here. What do I mean by your approach to the slide? I cannot tell you the number of times I have gone to somebody who is ostensibly trying to get better at presenting, right? Trying to make better presentations. And I will say, okay, this slide right here, it doesn't work. We need to scrap it. We need to find some new way of approaching this information. But they are stuck on it. They will say, no, this slide has to be this way. And while I understand that there are certain industries that have certain legal standards and things like that, beyond that, ultimately, everybody who consumes a presentation wants the same thing. They want to understand the information in a clean, concise, simple way. They want people to get to the point and move on. And if your slide does not help that, I guarantee you your audience doesn't care about that slide. There's so many times where people say, well, we've always put this pie chart on the slide, and that's what people are expecting. So we're going to stick with that pie chart. And I just roll my eyes, It's like, no, I'm certain the pie chart isn't what they're hoping for here. I'm certain that what they're really hoping for is for you to get to the point and make a better visual. Same thing with a lot of people will copy and paste an entire table onto a slide and just go, yeah, we need the whole table there. And I go, well, currently, nobody sitting in this conference room can physically read what's in that table. So I'm pretty sure we're not getting any benefit to having this table on the slide right now. So this is where that reset button concept comes into play, right? What I want you to do is take a moment, ask yourself the question, is there a legal reason? Am I obligated to do this thing? And if so, great, put it up there and then just move on to whatever the next thing is, the better thing, right? And if you don't, then just say, all right, I am actually allowed, I am permitted as a professional to potentially throw this slide away and replace it with a different approach, a better chart, a different visual. In the case of those big tables, just print the big table. Give everybody a sheet of paper. Then they can actually read everything, highlight what's useful to them. We can all move on with our lives. So take a moment. Remember that just because it's the way you've always done it does not mean it's a good idea. Find better approaches. All right. And finally, idea number 3 on hitting the reset button for your presentations. Now, this one is about just being a human, everybody. Okay, so I want you to take a moment for this. I want you to think, number 1, about the last time you were getting ready to lead a presentation. And if your emotions were starting to get the better of you a little bit, you were starting to get a little stressed, and you thought to yourself, oh, I just got to get through this. I got to power through this. I want to give you to give yourself the permission to slow down, watch a funny video, do just a couple of seconds of exercise, something to recenter yourself. Because all too often, I find that bad presentations are not really that bad based on the slides that people are putting up, but because that person just stands up and just blows through the content. They're nervous. They think that people want them to get to the point, so they talk faster, and they just sort of, they use that clicker like it's a stress toy, and they just move to the next slide, next slide, next slide, next slide. And the problem is that if you lose the audience in the first couple of minutes of the presentation, if you go too fast, right, and they get confused, they're not able to track what it is you're talking about, all of a sudden, they just checked out for the rest of the presentation. You can't get those people back because you lost them during that point in the time where you were trying to establish a connection and establish the baseline for everything that you were going to talk about. So give yourself the right to center, to calm your nerves a little bit, and to slow it down. I'm just going to take a moment here, everybody. I want you to know something very deeply. Even if somebody in your presentation is getting bored, or even if somebody in your presentation asks you to speed it along, they ask you to move forward, right? I want you to understand something very deeply. They never mean talk faster. I want you to understand that for a moment, okay? What I mean by that is they want you to get to your point faster. Maybe everybody understands the point that you're making. They want you to move on to the next point, that sort of thing. They don't want you to just get faster and click through the slides faster. Because if you talk faster, they're going to lose the thread. They're going to lose you the next time they get to something that they don't understand yet. Understand what they mean is, we've got this part. Let's move on to the next part where, again, you can approach this and you can see whether it's relevant to slow it back down. Okay, so in the same way, make sure you don't let yourself get carried away. Don't let yourself get too stressed out. Always allow yourself to slow the pace down. Even if you are jumping over some things in your presentation, you are still talking at a measured pace and trying to be as clear as possible. The other place where I want you to have the authority to hit the reset button and give everybody their human time is for your audience. I think we've started to all hear this at this stage, but I want to say it directly. We're scheduling meetings for an hour just because they've always been an hour. And I want you to seriously consider, do you ever really consume and stick with a presentation for a solid hour? No, you don't. After about 25 minutes, the best part of your brain has been used up. Understand that about your audience as well. Give everybody the ability to say, hey, what we're going to do is we're going to focus on something, laser focus on something for 20 or 25 minutes, and then we'll all go back to work, or we'll have a conversation, or whatever the case may be. Give yourself and your audience the ability to come back and be fresh and approach your problems head on, as opposed to dragging things along. So again, 3 main points about hitting the reset button in your presentation. Item number 1, press the literal reset button. It's on the home tab. at the top of the screen. You will find it next to the layout drop-down menu and next to the section drop-down menu at the top of the screen in PowerPoint. When you press that button, it sets your slide back to the original layout that it was supposed to look like in the first place. Drops out weird fonts, colors, positions, etc. Item number 2, reset your approach to visualizing the problem. Do not reuse the same slides over and over again because that's the way you've always done it. Allow yourself the time and space to consider new ways to visualize the information and throw away the old stuff. And item number 3, give you and your audience the authority, the ability to have a mental reset. Driving yourself forward constantly does not improve your presentation. Getting your mind right may actually improve your presentation. And ultimately, the reason that you are in a presentation in the first place is effective communication with other humans. If you are not effectively communicating with your audience, then why are you there? What is going on? Give yourself the right to be a human being, to have slightly lower attention spans, and to give yourself a mental reset. Chunk your ideas smaller. Don't approach it as we've got an hour for this meeting, but rather this is a piece of information I need to communicate to other people. All right. That's it for today's episode, everybody. I hope you found this episode valuable, and I hope you take time to back up the next time that you're planning a presentation. Don't drive forward. Don't look at messy slides and think, I must take action to clean those messy slides. Do not look at nerves before a presentation and drive forward and run faster through the presentation. But instead, slow down, back up, and press the reset button. If you have any questions or any topics you would like to see me handle during this podcast or during my tutorial videos, go ahead and email us. The email address is help@knacktraining.com. And go ahead and put podcast in the subject line. That'll help me understand what it's about. And if you'd like to connect with me about the business that I am running called Knack Training, if you want us to help you with your PowerPoint presentations, SharePoint, Teams, making Power BI reports, Power Automate automations, or dozens and dozens of other areas of expertise that we have, email us at info@knacktraining.com. Don't forget, subscribe to this feed to get weekly tips and tricks. And until next time, everybody, have a lovely week. Thanks so much.